keeping the arts institution and its health and its mission at the forefront of making any change is absolutely vital to being effective in making that change. Making certain that it's not personal, that it's about the institution and the betterment of the institution and its health. I think the approach is absolutely critical. I think to have a strong vision with conviction is a very important starting point. To have awareness and perspective, not just you as the person who needs to lead the change, but ensuring that everybody has perspective and awareness. I think trust is essential, so making certain that people trust you to lead the way if a change has to be made, and the way that you communicate how it's going to be implemented or put in place. Certainly leading by example, I think, is important. And an honest evaluation, I think, not just by you, but by people involved in the organization, looking at the situation honestly and openly, and again, the way that you communicate these things are very important. I think, to give you a concrete example, I was faced with having to make a significant change even before I started as executive director. I was asked prior to starting my job on January 1st, 2007, to attend a couple of board meetings leading up to my start date. And at my first board meeting, a discussion transpired regarding the basic board financial requirement. And what I learned in listening to the discussion from the outset was that no one knew what it was. So some people thought it was $500, and other people didn't think there was a requirement, and some people thought it was significantly more. So clearly a change needed to be made because there was no alignment regarding this issue. But what also needed to change was the understanding that it was the board's responsibility to give and get significantly and to lead the way in the area of fundraising. And I say this because in the time leading up to my start and a little bit after too, the organization's budget had grown by 50%. So just a few years before I started, it was hovering around $500,000 or $600,000, and by the time that I started, it was over $1 million. And the understanding of what the board's responsibility was in terms of fundraising and donating to the organization had not changed. So those things, it was clear to me at that moment, even before I started, that this was going to be a very sticky issue, but also something that needed to change significantly. And during this meeting, they decided that they would vote on a board minimum. And in the course of 2 seconds, someone threw out $500 and another person said, "That's what it's going to be," and I second that. And I had to stand up at that meeting, not even on board yet, officially, and say, "Let's retract that. And if you would just give me a moment to start my job and research this particular area, look at other organizations with similar sized budgets, similar program offerings, and find out, give our board perspective." They had no other perspective. And I should say that we have a relatively young board, a lot of people who've never served on other boards before. So there really needed to be not just awareness, but education there. And fortunately, they gave me several months to investigate this thoroughly, and to give them, I think, a very important perspective. And what ended up happening in the long run was that we increased the board minimum to $2,500. We also, in the process, put written board expectations in place. There had never been any written board expectations. So we put, with our nominating committee, we put expectations in place, which included this new suggested board minimum. And what ended up happening, and this was a very good thing, is that the people who didn't want to be a part of this new board nominating approach and take part in leading the fundraising resigned from the board. And then we had concrete written expectations to use when we sought board members in the future. It was I think a conviction with the board chair too that this had to happen. So it wasn't just me. It was a partnership of leaders making this happen. Mm-hmm. So I think that's where the leading by example, and the board chair was very much willing to adopt the new board minimum, herself, and all of the expectations that were put into place. So I think that was happening at the leadership level. I've been able to build trust by virtue of the fact that I'm actually a musician. And I think that has gone a long way in terms of building trust, particularly with the artistic team. I have a background in music, I have a degree in music, I continue to perform on the piano, and I think this was really significant for them when they hired me. I think putting the institution and the mission first and not making it about me and my ego, I think that is absolutely vital. And I think once people can see that you really have the best interests of the organization at heart, they'll start to feel that sense of trust. I also think sharing information, just being as communicative as possible, is absolutely vital. And I think, particularly as musicians, a lot of us are used to being in practice rooms and being by ourselves and spending long, whether you're a scholar or a conductor, there's so much time spent by yourself. You are often not a good communicator, and I will say, as a classical musician in particular, I was in music school with loads of people who could not communicate to save their lives. So I think it's a really important skill, and I think the more you communicate, the more people are going to trust you. I think most everything should be shared.